времени. Начало шестого сигнала соответствует 15 часам московского времени.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be taking a look at this contraption. This is the Primary Arms 5X Micro Prism and their top-mounted red dot landing platform, something that they designed to work with their micro prisms. But before we get into that, the big sponsors of the channel are going to be Optics Planet. Go ahead and use code FOCUS to save 7%. And if you're interested in ammunition, Callaway Ballistics, again, code FOCUS to save you some money. Now, getting into full disclosure on the Primary Arms 5X Prism, they did not send me this optic out. They haven't sent me any of their new optics. That's perfectly fine. I did break the last few that they sent me, but this one here was actually purchased by me for a customer for a build, and he allowed me to make a video off of it. Now, I do, of course, have a relationship with Primary Arms. They have sent me a lot of optics to test. I've broken quite a few of their optics, provided them some feedback on some of their stuff. On top of that, I also have a dealer account through them, through their wholesale side, so I buy $10,000 to $20,000, $30,000 worth of products from them. So just keep in mind that there has been a substantial long-term relationship there. Now, because this is not technically my optic, again, this is a customer's optic, I did not do a drop testing on it as he wanted to receive a working optic. Now, we will talk about the general durability of this setup a little bit later on, but again, keep in mind that I did not do drop testing because this is technically not my optic. Now, getting into what is the Primary Arms 5X Micro Prism, what we have is a fairly trim body coming in at 3.1 inches long and only 8.5 ounces. Now, for a 5X Prism, that is a pretty small and lightweight package for a relatively high amount of magnification. So again, it is very size and weight efficient. Now, on the optic itself, you have recessed windage and elevation. They are in quarter MOA increments, so they are more than precise enough. I think you're all going to be very happy with that in terms of precision. On the left-hand side of the body, we have our rheostat/battery terminal. This is going to have 13 settings, 3 night vision settings, and 10 daylight settings. It is rated for 29,000 hours of battery life at a medium setting. Think maybe closer to 5,000 to 10,000 hours at the higher settings, which you're probably going to want to use when you're out in daylight. Fortunately, that is also comboed with their auto live technology, meaning that it automatically turns on and off when it's, not used for, I think, 5 or 10 minutes, and then it'll turn back on when it senses motion. Other than that, on the body of the optic, the only other thing to talk about is the rear diopter, which can adjust the reticle to be as clear as it can be for your specific set of eyeballs. Everybody is a little bit different, so just adjust it to what works best for you. Now, getting into the mounting system, the good and the bad. The good is that this is using the ACOG mounting platform, so you can find a wide variety of aftermarket mounts for whatever your heart's desire in terms of height and cantilever sections. On top of that, they include a ton of different mounting options in the box. I think 9, 10 different configurations, something like that. Anything from a low mount all the way up to like 2.2 inches tall with variations in the how much backwards throw you have in the mount itself. So again, a huge amount of variability right out of the box. The bad is that, as we've tested before, the mounts don't hold up particularly well to the harshest drops that you can do. But again, for general purpose, if you're not going to be dropping it onto concrete or AR-500 steel plates, they will hold up generally fairly well. Now, the base mount itself is very good. You have 2 substantial cross bolts as well as 2 recoil lugs on the bottom, so you have a wide clamping surface, even pressure, and a good amount of contact between your upper receiver and the mount itself. Now, getting back to the 5X optic itself, let's go ahead and talk about usability and use case compared with some of the other optics in primary arms lineup. Now, they of course have the 1x micro prism, the 3x micro prism, and the 2x GLX, which is kind of in the same ballpark, though not quite. Those are all fairly general purpose. The 1x being, more suited to close range, the 3x being pretty suited to anything outside of 25 yards that'll do a very good job, and the 2x being a total compromise optic where it's decent at most things, but not particularly great at anything. Now, the 5x version is going to be much better suited to distance shooting, anything beyond 200 yards, than any of the other optics in primary arms Prism lineup. Now, it comes at the cost of its versatility and some of that close range performance. Now, primary arms did come out with a couple different mounting solutions for red dots. They have the new top-mounted red dot system, which we'll get into a little bit later on, and they also have a new offset mounting system as well for a 45-degree offset. And of course, you can always run your standard 45-degree offsets or anything else like that to give you something to enhance your close range performance. Now, talking about the optic and usability, as a 5x prism, it is actually pretty darn usable. I know some other 5x prisms on the market, 6x prisms, they tend to be very unforgiving in their eye relief and eye box, while the 5x micro prism is certainly less forgiving than the 1x and 3x prism in primary arms lineup and the 2x prism as well. For a 5x prism, it's certainly not bad. So they rate the eye relief at 2.7 inches, which is fairly tight, but it's not bad. I'm not craning super far forward like I would on an ACOG or some other optics. 2.7 inches is pretty good. You get a little bit back and a little bit forward before you get that dark ring. But again, the eye relief itself is decent for a 5x optic. Now, up, down, left, and right, your eye box is also all right. It's, again, fairly decent in the context of a 5x optic. If we were going to compare this again to most 3x prisms, 1x prisms, 2x prisms, it's pretty tight. So for such a small and lightweight 5x prism, it does retain a high level of usability. So eye box, eye relief, all that is, again, in the good category. Talking about field of view is rated at 21 feet at 100 yards, and for, again, a 5x prism, that's pretty good. It's not quite excellent or fantastic, but it is definitely very good. It gives you a good amount of information, and keep in mind it's also retaining a decent level of usability as well. Now, one of the minor downsides of most primary arms prism optics is that while the glass is good enough for a Chinese prism, it's still, Chinese glass. It's not going to be particularly bright, particularly good contrast or colors. Again, it looks all right and certainly better than some other Chinese optics on the market, but overall, the glass quality is fairly in the mediocre category. So while the glass is certainly nothing to write home about, it is definitely acceptable given the price category that the optic is in. I believe these are sub $400, and of course, the very diminutive size and weight. Now, the best part of the 5x prism, in my opinion, is going to be the reticle. This is using the ACSS Aura Mill reticle. They also have a yard version and a meter version BDC, but for my use case, the Aura Mill version is going to be my favorite. So getting into the reticle, as you would expect, in the center, we have our chevron. Now, this chevron on the 5x version is much more precise than the 3x and 1x version, so it's going to be much easier to use, much less obtrusive, which is what we'd want to see for having more magnification. On top of that, they have completely ditched the outer horseshoe. In my opinion, that is good. That is decluttering the image, especially again with 5x magnification. We're probably using it in a little bit more of a distance or precision application. Now, the mill grid is very simple. You have 1 by 1 mill grid dots all the way out to 10 mils. 10 mils on a 5.56 is about 800 yards, I want to say. I could be off on that, and again, it's going to depend on your barrel length, caliber, ammunition, so on and so forth. But for a 5x optic, that is about the top end of where you're going to want to take that. You can always take it further, but again, talking about ideals, 10 mils in your 1 by 1 mill grid is more than enough. Now, because this is an ACSS reticle, we also have auto ranging features built into the mill grid, as well as height on the left and right, as well as moving holds as well. So basically anything that you want to do with the ACSS or a mill, you can definitely do. I prefer working in mills. Any sort of grid system like that is very, very easy, especially with 5.56. If you're taking shots at say 500 or 600 yards in winds, having those mill dot wind holes is very, very nice. And if you're smarter than I am and can do things with them as, you can do a lot of really cool things with mills in general, but that's for smarter people and above my pay grade, which isn't saying all that much. So to recap what we have so far, we have a very good size and weight, again, around 8.5 ounces, depending on your mounting configuration. We have a decent eye relief, we have a decent eye box, we have a decent field of view, and we have a fantastic reticle and magnification combo. Now, the glass quality overall is, again, kind of fine-ish. You know, it's definitely nothing special, but it's not going to hold you back in most circumstances unless you're just an absolute glass snob. So what we have for a 5x prism is extremely efficient when it comes to price, size, and weight, comboed with a very, very good reticle system. Now, getting into the durability of these optics, as we've talked about before, the mounts have failed on me, the optic bodies have failed on me before in the harshest of drop tests. So basically, the AR500 steel drop has broken the 3x prism twice, both the body and the mounts. I've had the glass crack as well. So while I haven't dropped this optic specifically, they haven't really updated the mount design as far as I can tell. So I don't think it would be any more durable, but I don't think it would also be any less durable. By and large, they are durable optics, if just outside of like the top tier durability of certain other red dots and prisms on the market. Now, talking about their top mounted red dot system and some of the issues that I personally have with it. So what this is a shroud essentially that goes in between your mount and the optic body, and it allows you to put a red dot, or in this case, a green dot, on top of the prism to use as your close range or emergency solution. Now, the system that they've come out with as of right now, this is a Glock MOS adapter system, which is good and bad. It is good in the fact that you have a lot of adapters out there on the market. For basically any red dot will have a Glock MOS adapter. The bad part is that this is extremely tall. This is about 4 inches tall, which might help you in like night vision type things. But if you're trying to use it in a more normal configuration, it is definitely a chin weld, and barely a chin weld at that, because it is extremely tall, and having a MOS system means that you have another adapter plate that raises the red dot even further. Now, the red dot that I'm currently using, this is the Viridian RFX45, which is an enclosed green dot, fairly decent. Now, the mount design itself is extremely unique and interesting in how it interfaces with the mounts and gives you a landing platform for a red dot. The main problem that I see with it is just in terms of usability, it is extremely tall. That is a very, very tall red dot on top. Certainly not my favorite. Now, in terms of durability, it's not the thinnest aluminum out there, but I can almost 100% assure you that given a sufficient drop onto concrete, dirt, and rocks, or certainly an AR500 steel plate, that red dot mount will have quite a bit of shift in it if it doesn't outright bend out of position. Now, one note about that is that it almost acts like a sacrificial shroud to protect your main optic. So maybe in that regard, you might like to have it, just because the first thing to take the impact will be your red dot and your red dot mounting platform, which will then transfer that into the base mount itself, and it will keep almost all of that impact away from the main optic. So maybe that is really good for that sort of application, because it does kind of act like a sacrificial shroud. So interesting in that regard. I just don't like how tall it is, and again, depending on what mounts you're using, that 4-inch height could be a 5 or even taller, depending on how high you have the base mount or the base optic located. Now, the other mounting option for red dot that Primary Arms has come up with, I like a little bit more in the general purpose use case, but if you're like using it for night vision or something else, then a top mounted is probably a little bit better, but again, that doesn't really apply to me. So the other mounting solution is to replace the locking block with a locking block that also has a section for an offset red dot that mounts directly again to the base mount. That is a very interesting solution. I'm not sure how well that would hold zero, considering it's hooked up to a piece of the mount itself, not to something that the mount is hooked up to, if that makes sense. So it's actually a part of the locking block itself. I would assume that would be fairly secure, but again, it's not something that I've tested, though from a usability aspect, I find doing this to be very easy. This, especially around cover, that can be very difficult to do. And you also have an insane height over bore, again, given the, that much height over bore or so. That is a very, very large distance and something that will definitely throw you off depending on your target size and distance. Now, overall, while I don't think either option is perfect, I am very glad that Primary Arms came out with multiple different options for people to try out for whichever one works best, especially given the fact that this is such a small and lightweight optic. It is very nice to have kind of built-in options for offsetting a red dot or mounting one on top. Though again, in my personal opinion, the best solution would actually just to mount your offset red dot on a separate 45-degree offset or something like that. That would probably be my ideal use case, but it is nice that they include options, not include options, you do have to buy them separately, but fairly inexpensive options to mount an offset red dot to your very small lightweight optic. Now, getting back to the 5X Prism itself, I think that this is a fantastic addition to the Primary Arms lineup. It is, again, extremely size and weight efficient compared to its magnification level. 5X for a mountain gun, anything where you're going to be shooting between 2 and 700 yards is going to be very usable. Again, you have a very usable eye box, eye relief, field of view is good. Fantastic reticle, mediocre glass, but the reticle magnification combo is very, very useful at those mid-range distances. Up close, you'll have to find a solution that works best for you, but I am sure that you guys can manage and figure out what works best for you. Even with a offset or top-mounted red dot, it's going to be probably about half the size and weight of a comparable LPVO setup, with very little performance penalty, again being a very size, weight, and cost-efficient option as well. So, if you're into the Prism game and you need something with a little bit higher magnification, I think the Primary Arms 5X Prism does a fantastic job at that. It's maybe not the best general purpose prism on the market like the 3X is, because the 3X can be used up close basically just by itself. You don't necessarily need an offset red dot, whereas a 5X does complicate close range a little bit. Yes, of course, you can still use it, but it's not necessarily ideal. So again, as a more mid-range focused option, I think it does make a ton of sense in Primary Arms lineup and is overall a pretty fantastic buy. So with all that out of the way, guys, let me know what you guys think of the Primary Arms 5X Prism in the comments down below. If you love or hate the red dot mounting solution, which one you would prefer, the top mounted or the offset or a separate offset, which would probably be my preference overall. But once again, with all that out of the way, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. Peace off.